a lot of sushi. And looking at the crowd, there's so much sushi, you have no idea. But we don't want you to put it in your pocket going out. You know, that's all I have to say. So we are going to begin our service as we begin with Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat, nekabla. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat, nekabla. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom umevorach. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom umevorach.
We are going to be continuing with lighting of the Shabbat candles. Glenn, I'm going to ask you to come forward. You're welcome. Page 7.
Come, let us welcome Shabbat. May its radiance warm our hearts as we kindle these tapers.
Light is a symbol of God's presence in our lives. The Eternal One is our light and our salvation.
Light is the symbol of the holiness within each of us. The human spirit is the light of God.
Light is the symbol of the Torah's teachings. The commandment is the lamp, and the Torah is the light.
Light is the symbol of Israel's mission, as it is written, I have made you a covenant people, to serve as a light to the nations.
Therefore, in the spirit of our ancient tradition, that hallows and unites Israel and all lands and all ages, we kindle the lights of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai,
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat, lehadlik ner shel
we praise our eternal God, creator of the universe, who hallows our lives through laws and ethical teachings. We are mindful of these timeless values as we kindle the lights of Shabbat. May God bless us with Shabbat joy. May God bless us with Shabbat holiness. May God bless us with Shabbat peace. Amen.
We are going to continue on page 59 as we rise for the Baruch.
Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai.
be seated. We continue on page 60. O God, how can we know you? Where can we find you? You are as close to us as breathing, and yet are farther than the most distant star. You are as mysterious as the vast solitudes of the night, and yet are as familiar to us as the light of the sun. Even to Moses you said, you cannot see my countenance, but I will make all of my goodness pass before you. Thus does your goodness pass before us in the realm of nature and the varied experiences of our lives. We continue with Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amecha ahavta, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shochbeinu uv'kumenu na'asiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei tortecha uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki yehem chayenu ve'orach yamenu uvahem negei yomam v'layla negei yomam v'layla ve'ahavatcha al tashir mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael ohev amo Yisrael.
On page 62, we continue with the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod, Malchuto, Le'olam, Le'olam Va'ed. You shall love the eternal God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be upon your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. You shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be a symbol before your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, that you may remember and do all of my commandments, and be holy, holy to your God.
On page 65, let us read these verses responsively. All this we hold to be true and sure. We have only one God, and there is none else. May the righteous of all nations rejoice in God's love and exult in God's justice. Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Let nation not lift up sword against nation, or learn war anymore. You shall not hate your brother or your sister in your heart. The stranger that sojourns with you shall be accepted as your equal, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor, asked God. The Eternal One defends the poor and upholds the rights of the needy. We continue with Mi Chamocha.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilo tosefele, nora tehilo tosefele. Malechutecha ra'u v'anecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe, ze Elianu ve'amru, ze Elianu ve'amru, Adonai Le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilo tosefele, nora tehilo tosefele.
We continue in the middle of page 66 with Vishamru.
Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, et HaShabbat. La'asot et HaShabbat לדורותם ברית עולם, ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת, שבת ויהי נפש.
On page 68, let us read these words together. Grant, O God, that we may lie down in peace and that we may rise up again to life. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with wise counsel. Be as a shield about us, fortifying us against hatred and war, against pestilence and sorrow. Curb within us the inclination to do evil. Enfold us with the embrace of your love. Guide our going out and coming in to life and peace from this time forth and forever. We praise you, God, for you shelter us and all who dwell on earth. Let's turn to page 69 and let us rise for the tefillah.
Adonai Sefadai Tiftach, Adonai Sefadai Tiftach, Ufi Yagit Tehilatecha, Ufi Yagit Tehilatecha. Adonai Sefadai Tiftach, Adonai Sefadai Tiftach, Ufi Yagit Tehilatecha, Ufi Yagit Tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Hagedol, Hagibor, v'Hanara, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, v'Gonei Okol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת זרע.
Let us be seated. We continue on page 71. Let me begin. Source of all knowledge and wisdom, you have endowed us with reason and understanding. We pray for the light of your truth, for insight into your ways, and for the strength to banish from our hearts every unworthy desire. Forgive us for our transgressions and pardon our failings. May those who have lost their way come to know your love again, that they may turn to you with newness of heart. Together, our God and God of our mothers and fathers, grant that our worship on this Shabbat may be acceptable to you. Sanctify us through your precepts that we may share in the blessings of the Torah. Help us to be satisfied with the gifts of your goodness and grateful for all that you bestow. Purify our hearts that we may serve you in truth. May we preserve Shabbat as our people's heritage from generation to generation, that it will ever bring rest and joy, peace and comfort to our lives. We praise the eternal God who sanctifies Shabbat. Page 72, Creator of all the world, you have blessed us with noble powers. Teach us to make wise use of them. You have called us to be your partners in a never-ending work of creation. We thank you for the capacity to choose the path devoted to your service and dedicated to the well-being of those around us. Together at the top of page 73, may all people find their way and help establish peace in our world. Let them cultivate that goodwill which may bring enduring peace. Let all nations realize that the triumph of war turn to ashes, that justice and right are better than conquest and aggression. May they come to see that it is not by might and not by power, but by your Spirit that life prevails. Bless our land with plenty and our nation with peace. May righteousness abide with us and virtue bring us happiness. Blessed is our eternal God who hearkens to prayer. We continue with Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Taisin Le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Taisin אתה הוא מלך אדום לכל השלום, כי אתה הוא מלך אדום לכל השלום, וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום.
Let us continue in some moments of private reflection. Friends, let us turn back in our Seder Ream, our prayer books, to page 10, and let me begin at the top of the page. Prayer invites God's presence to lift our spirits. It allows the blessing and gift of hope to prevail in our lives. Prayer may not bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city, but prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, and rebuild a weakened will. Together we pray for all people who at this hour are in sickness and want, in the distress of body or spirit. We name in our hearts those who are near to us, in whose pain we feel pain. Let them know your help and feel your presence, realizing that they are not alone. Friends, there are moments of loneliness when one is ill, and one of the purposes of religious community is to create connection and love and support. And therefore, at this time in our service, we are mindful of those who are ill and those who are helping those who are ill. And we pray that they will have strength and courage, and they're able to be healed and be given strength. At this time, if anyone would like to share a name of someone that they are thinking of and want to be included in our collective prayers, they may do so. I'm going to go around the room, and if you want to mention a name out loud or to yourself, that's fine. Anyone? Okay.
Scott Tribus and Edward Minor.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Barbara Katz.
Okay. Okay. Let's continue with Misha Baruch.
Misha Baruch Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Le'imotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Baruch Imotenu Avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Yud ratzon imre fi, Yud ratzon imre fi, ve'gion libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri ve'go'ali. Oh, may the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable before you, eternal God, my rock and my redeemer. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, ve'imru, amen.
We continue on page 368. We rise for the adoration.
Let us adore the ever-living God. We offer praise unto you, who spread out the heavens and established the earth. Your glory is revealed in the heavens above, and your greatness is manifest throughout the world. You are God, there is none else. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומועלים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
You may be seated. Let's read together on page 369. May the time not be distant, O God, when you shall be worshipped throughout the earth, when unbelief shall disappear and error be no more. Fervently we pray that the day may come when all people shall be guided by your teachings. Corruption and evil shall give way to purity and goodness. Superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. Then all who dwell on earth shall know that to you alone every knee shall bend and every voice give praise. May all created in your image recognize that we are brothers and sisters, so that one in spirit and one in harmony be forever united before you. Then shall your reign be established on earth, and the word of your ancient prophet be fulfilled. The eternal God will reign forever and ever. On that day the eternal shall be one, and God's name shall be one.
ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, אדוני
Friends, at this time we recall the yurt sites that are part of the permanent memory of our community. Joanne Berkeley, Helen Blond, Beverly Brick, George Brick, Selma Feld, Judith Fleischer, Charles Great, Mildred Great, James Hellsberg, Rosine Hellsberg, Harris Herman, Clarence Hirsch, Ruth Auerbach Hirsch, Erwin Holzmark, Rudy Lang, Thomas Lefkowitz, Morris Rosenbaum, Paul Schneidman, and Dewey Ziegler. In solemn testimony to that unbroken faith that links the generations of the house of Israel one to another, we ask everyone to please rise as we join with the mourners in reciting the Mourner's Kaddish, page 375 and 376. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbi, b'yama divrach hirutei v'yamlich machutei, b'chayechon uv'yamechon uv'chayedachol beit Yisrael, Bagalav izman kari v'yimru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mivarach le'olam omei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dekudesha b'rechu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran v'yoma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yokol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'yokol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May the one who causes peace to reign in the high heavens let peace descend on us and all Israel, on all the world. And we say together, amen. Please be seated. The Bima flowers are dedicated this evening in memory of Helen Blond by Marilyn Melcher, in memory of Beverly Brick and George Brick by Jeff and Stevie Brick, in memory of Judith Fleischer by Pam Fleischer and Ken Weiner, in memory of Charles Great and Mildred Great by Stephen Great and Richard Landau, in memory of James Hellsberg, Rosine Hellsberg, Clarence Hirsch, and Ruth Auerbach Hirsch by Risa and John Hellsberg, in memory of Harris Herman by Mike and Karen Herman, in memory of Thomas Lefkowitz by Lisa Lefkowitz and Jeff Keeley, and in memory of Dewey Ziegler by Laura Ziegler Davis family and Ted and Sarah Prince. Just some brief announcements. Torah study tomorrow from 10 to 11:30 here, and Rabbi Ben-Horin will be teaching us about Ki Tavo, our Parsha, and this is his title, The Mind, the Story, and the Human Condition. That's ominous. It's perfect before Rosh Hashanah, or before Slichot. There is a community Slichot program and service tomorrow evening. We have our service at Beth Torah. There will be multiple access participation. In other words, it will be streamed as well. The evening will begin at a reception at 8 p.m., followed by Haftalah at 8:45. There will be a wonderful presentation about the Musar, and the Slichot service will begin at 10 p.m. That's late. But traditionally, it was supposed to be done after midnight, so this is early. Rosh Hashanah services are Sunday, September 25th. We have two services the evening of Rosh Hashanah, one at 5 p.m. and one at 7:30 p.m. And it would be wonderful to know which one you choose to attend. And if you don't have tickets or need to come, call the synagogue, and we can connect you to make that happen. And Monday, September 26th, there's our morning service at 10 a.m., and then a 5 p.m. family service at Luce Park, followed by Tashlich at 6 p.m. We have a Sukkot Fest on Sunday, October 9th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. You'll get more information about that, and I want to make available to you these announcements relating to our social justice activities. Among them are blood drive from September 19th through September 23rd. And if you want to donate through the the New Reform Temple group, we can give you that registration number. The Children's Place donation drive. The Children's Place helps children and families heal when they have faced trauma. And starting this month, donations of new and gently used learning and playtime supplies, including glue sticks, watercolors, toy race cars, baby dolls of all races, can be dropped off at the New Reform Temple during the week. We have Put Food in Your Car and Smile on a Face from 1:30 to 4 p.m. on the fourth Friday of each month at the Unity Southeast Church, where we volunteer to give out food to those who are in need. And finally, we have Digitutoring, and a partnership that we created with Operation Breakthrough to address Kansas City children's needs. And they are in need of tutors. That is done online, and you still can sign up and just contact the office. Okay. Now we're getting to the interesting stuff. Could we get a? We're gonna do Lichy Lach, but I just want to get his microphone. Let's do Lichy Lach, and then we'll worry about it. Okay. We're going to conclude our service with Lichy Lach. You can follow along in the Siddur on page 437.
Lichy Lach, to a land that I will show you. Lech Lecha, to a place you do not know. On your journey I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. Lichy Lach. Lichy Lach, and I shall make your name great. Lech Lecha, and all shall praise your name. Lichy Lach, to the place that I will show you. L'simchat chaim, l'simchat chaim, l'simchat chaim, lichy lach. And you shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing, lichy lach.
Friends, we're very blessed tonight to have a wonderful teacher, guest speaker, just a wonderful force from Israel and education and Jewish people and a reform movement. And let me give you a little bit about Rabbi Golan Benjarin. He is an entrepreneurial educator, a community innovator, and international consultant. He works in intercultural diversity, dealing with pluralistic communities, and he founded Limud Haifa, and the first Mediterranean conference was Limud Mediterranean. His intercultural work expresses itself in his founding of the Haifa Forum for Interfaith Cooperation, and his work in various international interfaith organizations. He was ordained by the Hebrew College in Jerusalem with a doctorate from the Jewish Theological Seminary of New York on the topic of Jewish pluralism. Rabbi Golan has designed and directed innovative local and international education initiatives, including Brandeis University's BGI, the Global Teen Fellowship, the inaugural International Summit, Limud Connect, and the Israeli programs for the Leo Beck Rabbinical Seminary in London. And he's going to explain exactly what he's doing here in town. Because it's fantastic, but I'm not smart enough to explain it. So we are so delighted you are here. I just want to say one thing. Recently, Rabbi Benjarin lost both of his parents, and that must be a difficult time for you. And I just want to know something. I spoke to you when we spoke on several occasions that I was in Berlin several years ago when your dad was in Berlin as a rabbi. And I remember a Friday night when these Reform rabbis came to his congregation, and he was so warm and gracious and wonderful and quite a man. And he went from German to speak to us in English, and it was really a wonderful experience, an incredibly unusual synagogue, a Reform synagogue with separate seating. So it was a unique experience. So I hope we give you the welcome that he gave us. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Toda Rabba, Rabbi Londy, Toda Rabba. What a pleasure to be here. First of all, thank you for the invitation to speak. And I also want to say a big Yishar Koach and thank you to the two of you. I usually cannot pray in English, but you managed to move my soul, my heart. The Shema that you did in English was a unique moment for me where even in the, can we say it, unholy language of English, my soul was praying. So thank you. That was already a beautiful gift.
I don't want to interrupt you. Becky and
But you're going to anyhow.
I will do that. Becky and Nathan wrote that setting. So that's theirs.
Thank you. Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. Please interrupt me. You know, I say to people that if I wanted to hear myself speak, I would stay at home. So I really want to know also what's of interest to you. I'll give a little bit of a context because maybe, there might be lots of things that are of interest to you and I don't know anything about. I'll tell you what I do know a little bit about. So first of all, I'm an Israeli. And I know that my accent doesn't give it away. I can talk like an Israeli and really, really make sure that, and I'm sorry if I insulted anybody, but it's important because I'm a third generation Israeli Reform leader. And I say leader because my grandfather was not a rabbi. He was everything but a rabbi, and he scared most rabbis because his knowledge and his sharpness and his ability to take Jewish tradition and make it relevant, everything but a rabbi. He was a great theologian. He escaped Nazi Germany, and at the age of 18, he published his first book of poetry in Munich under the pen name of Ben-Chorin. And you might know that name, Ben-Chorin, or that saying, which means freedom, a son of freedom. And it's Avadim ha'inu ata b'nei chorin. We were slaves and now we are b'nei chorin, we are free. And that's the name that he chose. And my father actually studied here in the United States. He was born, my wife tells me that I can't tell this joke, so I don't, that my father is actually a Palestinian. And she said, no, you can't say that. And I say, why? He was born in Palestine, right? He was born in Israel before the state of Israel was established. He was born in Jerusalem, and he grew up in Jerusalem. And being the son of my grandfather and my grandmother, he took in this beauty of Reform Judaism, the Israeli version. And by the way, everything's different in Israel, if you haven't noticed, right? Also, Reform Judaism is different in Israel, and that's wonderful. And that's another topic. I won't be talking about that tonight. But my father of blessed memory was the first Israeli-born Reform rabbi. So the first Sabra to become a Reform rabbi. And he had to come to the United States to study because at the time there was no HUC in Jerusalem. By the way, even when there was HUC in Jerusalem, it wasn't really HUC in Jerusalem because they opened it up as an archaeological school because the state wouldn't allow them to build a Reform rabbinical school. And so they snuck that in the back door. And until today, you can find in that back door some archaeology, but now it's really a place to train rabbis, as your rabbi knows so well, and his daughter is about to be ordained in Israel. Yishar Koach, what a beautiful, beautiful legacy. And so, I grew up in one more generation, we have to do that. My children are fourth generation Israeli Reform. Most people don't know that there are such beings on earth. And we prove that they're wrong. And I'm very proud of them. I'll tell you a quick story about my daughter. I promise I'll get to the topic, and I'm just giving you some background. So my daughter, to the best of my knowledge, is the first woman to stand up in an Israeli army mess hall and lead Kiddush on Friday night. She was asked to do that because people knew who she was, and she stood up in front of soldiers and officers. And yes, she was in the Israeli army at the age of 18. She went into the Israeli army, as many of the young citizens of Israel do, and she decided to be a combat soldier. And her younger brother, our son, followed in her footsteps and also is now in the Israeli army serving. She's out and studying, and he's in a special program leading to be an officer in the Israeli army. He calls me up and he says, "Abba, I have 15 minutes to decide if I'm going to be an officer." That's not how the Israeli army works. He didn't know that he got into a very special program. Some kids had to train for an entire year to get into it. There were 2 spots left. He tried out for something else. He got the first tier. He wanted the second. He got the first, and he calls me up and he says, "But how can I be an Israeli officer?" He says, "I hate it when people tell me what to do. But you know what I hate even more? When I have to tell someone else what to do. How am I going to be an Israeli officer in the Israeli army?" Anyhow, he's there, and he'll have to work it out. All that to say that my experience is truly an Israeli experience. Growing up there, being very strange to people. Because when my father started being a Reform rabbi in Israel, nobody knew what Reform Judaism was. And I, as the child of such a person, had to sort of explain what this thing was all about. It was like UFOs had landed, the doors opened, and out we came. Nobody understood what we were. And we stand on the shoulders of giants of my father's generation who really introduced Reform Judaism to Israel. And here's the question that I want to ask that leads right into the topic of tonight. And I'd love to hear also your thoughts and questions about this. And it's really about the connection and the interaction between Jews and non-Jews in Israel. Okay, Jews and non-Jews in Israel. And why is that important? Maybe finally when we have the state of Israel, maybe we can finally relax and not bother about relations between Jews and non-Jews. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. At the beginning of time, God created the heavens and the earth. Fast forward to the beginning of last year, and a few of us stepped onto the pickleball court in Haifa. Who here doesn't know what pickleball is? Okay, a little bit. Okay, there's good. It's a great game. Find out about it. Who here hasn't been to Haifa? Okay, so more people have not been to Haifa than don't know what pickleball is. Excellent. First of all, come to Haifa and play pickleball. You'll get both of those together. So, what is this story? And what does the verse, Bereshit bara Elohim, at the beginning of time, God created the heaven and the earth, and our pickleball story? And what has it got to do with the high holidays? So you'll know that we're done when you get the answer to those 3 questions. Okay? And please follow. If you don't feel satisfied with the answer, or maybe with the questions, and let me know so we'll continue a little longer and the sushi will get hot. Okay. Rabbi Yitzchak in the Talmud asks the question, why does the Torah begin with a story of creation? Shouldn't the Torah have begun with the story of the Jewish people? And he even says further, if the Torah is the book of law, then we should have started the Torah with the first commandment given to the Jewish people, which was, HaChodesh hazeh lachem. This is how you should celebrate the new moon. So why does it start with the creation story? First of all, as we all know, questions are much better than answers. I'll ruin it by giving a little answer. But that question is beautiful when the rabbis themselves ask why the Torah begins not with our particular story, but with the universal message of creation. It's a great question. And so, we already find that in Judaism there's a tension set up within the Torah between the universal message of the creation of the cosmos and us, and within that, us as human beings with all our diversity, and the story within that of a particular group within that humanity, the Jewish people. Which comes to teach us an important lesson. It seems obvious, but it took Abraham Joshua Heschel to say that no religion is an island. Meaning what? We do not exist as individual entities. This is true about a nation. It's true about a family. It's true about an individual. There is always a greater context in which we exist, and not only exist, but flourish. If we depart and say, I am for myself and nothing else matters. By the way, that sounds awful, but so much of Western culture today is actually pushing us more and more into that corner. It's about me. It's about my pleasure. It's about what I want to do. It's about what... Now, there's nothing bad about knowing who I am and trying to fully express that in the world. I think so much of Judaism teaches us to do just that. But never alone. Always within a context. It's a beautiful invention of Judaism, the minyan. Right? Not the movie, but the minyan. We need 10 people. Why? What, God doesn't listen to me? My voice is not strong enough? I need 10 people to shout at God and say, Geschrei, what's going on here in this world? What's the point of 10 people? By the way, it's so fascinating where it came from, and this goes right to our issue of interfaith dialogue. The 10 in the Torah come actually as a revolt against Moses. Right? When Korach stands up and says, who are you to lead us? Aren't we all chosen by God? Why are you so special? Can't we all prophesy in the name of Adonai, in the name of God? That's where the rabbis took the number 10 from. Kol ha'edah. Edah, they say are 10 people, all of that group, who? Of Korach, who actually revolted against Moses. How is that connected to interfaith? Let's go for a moment to how the mind works. This is not a specialty of mine. I'm a little bit more of a specialist on how the soul works. But I love to read about how the mind works. And the mind can do wonderful things in the world. But there's one thing the mind cannot do. We can never step outside of our own mind. We can imagine that. We can dream it. We can write poetry about that. But all that is always from within our own mind. So maybe we are able to do wondrous things in the world, but we can never step outside our own mind. There's no full remedy to that, but there is something we can do. Two people meet, and one person believes in one thing, the other person believes in the other, and there's interaction between them. Right? This happens so often in the Torah. We are told, for instance, that Jacob meets a person, a wondrous person. Some people say that was an angel. That's lovely, but the Torah says it's a person, it's not an angel. And then what happens between them? There's a struggle. One wants to do one thing, the other wants to do another. Who's right? Who's wrong? If I can never step outside of my own mind, how do I know that I'm right? I meet someone, they convince me, I go over to their side. Wonderful. Or I meet someone and I convince them and they come over to my side. Usually that doesn't happen, by the way. But what does happen, really interesting. That point that you talked about, I've never thought about it. Or I'm now challenged by you to think differently because you have a different perspective. Now we start to understand why meeting others and having dialogue is so important. Because it enables us to think from a different point of view. Here's how Sports Illustrated talked about this just in June, which seems to be last month, but I seem to have lost a few on the way. So it was actually last June, and at the end of an article, guess what it was about? The game that you know so much about? Pickleball, right? So at the end of the article, it says this. In Haifa, not far away from Bethlehem, a rabbi and 12 disciples, get it, right, walk onto the pickleball court. Okay, a rabbi and 12 disciples, one started Christianity. And they like to say, so a rabbi and 12 of, and it's true, we are 13 people in the interfaith pickleball group that I created in Haifa. Right? I fell in love with a game in Florida. I got stuck back at home in Israel because of COVID. And then I was in Haifa, where I live with my family. And I was at the tennis center. And at the tennis center, I was talking to someone about a program called Finding North. Finding North is a program that my business partner and I and my great friend Johanna Ginsberg and I created to do something else. I'll tell you all about that later. But we were there to talk about this program. And then, apropos nothing, I said to the director of the tennis center in Haifa, do you know pickleball? He said, what do you mean, do you know pickleball? Of course, I have a pickleball court here. I said, what? You have a pickleball court in Haifa and I didn't know about it? I'm dying to play pickleball. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get some of my friends, Jews and Muslims and Christians and men and women and straight and gay and religious and secular and older and a little less old, and we're going to play pickleball together. Great, he said. The reason I did it was because I love to play pickleball. But when you love something, you want to also share it beyond boundaries. And in Haifa, for those of you who have been, you might not have noticed. For those of you who haven't been, you have to come. And everybody should come and visit us on Finding North in Haifa. You will be able to do Finding North also right here at the Mitzvah Garden, and we'll tell you about that as well. But what's so special about Haifa? Haifa is a place where Muslims and Christians and Jews and Baha'is and Druze mix together in the city. So much so that when you walk along the beach of Haifa, you hear all these languages, and it's just natural. You'll walk and you'll hear Russian and Amharic and Arabic, a little bit of Hebrew as well every now and again, and everybody is there together. But that only happens in two places, on the beach and in the mall. Because Haifa is the best that we have in terms of shared society in Israel, but it's still a far cry from what it needs to be. I'm working with lots of other people to create in Haifa a place where people are equal, where citizens are equal. Now, there's nothing simple about that. Israel is a place where intensity and sanctity and devotion and emotion erupt on an hourly basis. You don't like it? Don't live in Israel. You want to be part of it? Come and join us. It's the place where there are more international reporters than anywhere else on the globe compared to its size. More than in New York, more than in the United Nations headquarters, more than Kansas City, I believe. So there are more international reporters in Israel than anywhere else on the globe, yet Israel is so small it doesn't fit on the globe. Right? Look at the globe. There still are those round ones that actually do turn around, right? And it's not with your finger that goes like this on the screen. There's no place for Israel. It's so tiny. Why? Why? We have this concept, you might have heard of it, the three Abrahamic religions. Right? The three Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. That is called chutzpah. Why? Right? There are 9 billion people in the world. There's close to 2 billion Christians. There's a little less Muslims. How many Jews are there in the world? It's a trick question. Don't answer it. How many Jews are there in the world? Anybody want to guess? 18 million. Do I hear 19 going once, 19 going twice? Do I hear any more? 20. Okay. And the answer is we don't know. Why don't we know? Who defines who's a Jew? You don't have a definition of who's a Jew. How can you count those who are not defined as who's a Jew? Okay, and then different people have different ways of defining it. Maybe we're 13 to 15 million Jews in the world. Okay, in Haifa, one of my partners in so much of the work that I do are the Ahmadiyyan Muslim community. The Ahmadiyyan Muslim community, based in Haifa, it's their center for the entire Middle East. It's a tiny sect of Islam. Anybody want to guess how many anybody heard of the Ahmadiyyan Muslims? No. 2 of you, I know, because I introduced you to them. There are approximately 20 million Ahmadiyyans in the world. So there's more Ahmadiyyans, which is a tiny sect of Islam, than Jews in the entire world. And yet we say the 3 Abrahamic religions. That makes us feel wonderful, right? We are tiny, but we make so much noise. Wow. Okay? Because that's who we are. That's who we are. Now, why would I want in Haifa to reach out to all these different communities and faith communities and religions? By the way, more people in the world today are secular than religious. That might change, by the way, because that wave of religiosity is coming back, some say. So if you say interfaith interactions, right? But what's with those people who don't have the faith? So is it intercultural? That's also difficult. So I like to talk about cross-cultural interaction. And also, when we say interfaith, how about the Jews who are not religious? Right? What is Judaism? That's a small question to be answered over, a few here and there. I just want to give you something to think about. For me, Judaism is not a religion. There is a religious interpretation or expression of Judaism. But just like there's a religious expression of Judaism, there's a cultural expression of Judaism. There's a nationality, right? That can be, there's the Jewish people. How can all these be true if Judaism were just a religion? To me, Judaism is a system or a language of meaning making. Judaism is a particular type of language by which we can live a life of meaning. That's one of the things that we explore on Finding North. The programs that we run that are part travel, part retreat, part summer camp, and part vacation. These are programs that we've put together. It started out in Haifa, where you come for a month to immerse yourself in the life of the city. You come to live in Haifa for a month and hear and see all the things that I've been sharing with you about, right? The different faith communities, the Ahmadiyyans, the flea market, the fruit and vegetable market, the beach and the mountains, all of these combined. And all are used in order to look inside to ourselves and find out what is really important to me. You step out of your life for a month, you reflect by meeting different places and people, and always through storytelling. It's a storytelling vacation in which we hear stories from different faith communities, from different people, and those stories trigger stories for us from our own lives. And as we look at those stories, because they are midrash, they are a story that holds a truth beyond the detail of the specific issue that we're dealing with. And we teach along the way how to look at the stories we tell in order to uncover those deep truths that we are telling ourselves. Now back to the interfaith world, or the cross-cultural. I want to share a couple of stories and then see if any of this has triggered some questions for you or remarks. On the way from Haifa, I left Haifa about 10 days ago, and the taxi driver turned to me and said, "You know, it's thanks to your son who's serving in the army that I sleep soundly at night." Now that's an interesting comment, but I'm going to make it much more interesting. He is Palestinian, he is Muslim, and he lives in Haifa. And he knows my son because he was at his bar mitzvah. And we know his daughter because we were at her wedding. Palestinian Muslims saying thank you to a Jewish soldier who's defending Israel so that he can sleep soundly, and when he wakes up, take me to the airport. Another story. There's a wonderful Armenian artist by the name of Rena. She does pottery and she paints beautifully in the Armenian tradition. She lives in the Arab neighborhood. There's one neighborhood there are a couple of neighborhoods. In Haifa, in the building that I lived in the apartment building that I lived in, not now, but before, about up to 8 years ago, there were 2 Arab families and 4 Jewish families in the same building. That doesn't happen very often in Israel. In Haifa, that's common. We interact. I'll tell you a story, and then I'll get back to the other story. One of the best celebrations we had for Israel's Independence Day was with our Ahmadiyyan Muslim friends who invited us over, and we did what all Israelis do, and it's very common here, but we call it ala esh, on the fire, and we do this because you have to get the fire going, right? So it's called mangal, which is barbecue, okay? But in Israel, on Independence Day, everybody does a barbecue. We went to our Muslim friends and we did barbecue together. And not only that, they bought a new barbecue because they wanted to make it kosher. Wow. And Eid al-Fitr, their holiday, or breaking of the fast on Ramadan, we'll do together. Why is this so important, and what has it got to do with the high holidays that are coming up? Israel has the potential to be the expression of Judaism in all fields of life. That's what's unique about Israel. Outside of Israel, we have other allegiances and other parts of our identity that fulfill certain aspects of our life. In Israel, there's the potential for the land of Israel to express Judaism at its best. Are we doing a good job of it? I won't say anything because it's Shabbos, but that's why I live there, because I want to make a difference. That's why we need you who share values of Reform Judaism. And how do we share them? On this topic, we reach out to the other and we have interactions in order to get a different perspective on our reality. And good people, that's what we need for the high holidays. We need to change our angle. Because if we keep doing what we've been doing up to now, how can we do tshuva? How can we turn our ways? How can we change if we keep banging our heads on the same wall? Thank God we also do some good things, right? But those things that we want to change, how will we change them? If we change our perspective and we manage to see them. How can we do that? By interaction with others, in the community, in prayer, in discussion, in therapy, in experiments that we do. But all of those say what? They say, wake up, kum ben adam, wake up and look at it from a different perspective. That's why we need to keep doing what we're doing in Israel and reaching out to the Muslim communities, to the Christian communities. And in Israel, we do them from the perspective of being the majority. The Jews are the majority. And it's even more our responsibility to make sure that everyone can live as an equal citizen in a state that is a Jewish democratic state. That sentence is even so complicated that it's an entire discussion how we do it. But I want to give you a sense of hope. There are people doing this work all the time in Israel. And I invite you to be part of that. So I think I've tried to answer the 3 questions. Anybody remember them? Okay. In the beginning, there was Bereshit bara. So that tells us there's a universalistic message in Judaism. And then there is the pickleball group that we've created, the interfaith group. Why have we done that? Because it's our responsibility. Because that's what Judaism teaches us to do. To interact with the other and never be an island to ourselves. How is that connected to the high holidays? Because that different perspective can wake us up and give us what we need in order to make our lives and our choices even better than they are today. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. Shabbat Shalom.
We're going to head into the foyer with a lot of food, and there'll be a lot of opportunity to interact and to ask questions, and we're just delighted you're here.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.